Hi, my name is Claire Meshkat, and I am one half of the Vivify STEM team. Thank you so much for tuning into this session on long-term STEM projects. My hope is that you walk away from this feeling inspired and equipped to challenge your students with an open-ended STEM project that will culminate all that they are learning in your classroom or program. Let's dive in. If the purpose of STEM education is to equip students with the tools and experience to fill the STEM careers needed for our future, then we can't stop at only doing engineering design challenges. STEM education can and often should begin with simple challenges that walk kids through how to be an effective communicator and teammate. These types of challenges are what we like to call icebreakers, or stage 1 STEM activities, like simple tower building challenges or other activities that may offer little in the way of teaching science or applying math skills, but do foster teamwork and critical thinking. You then move into engineering design challenges, or stage 2 STEM, where students get to create something that solves a problem by applying their science and math knowledge. Catapults, sailboats carrying weight, or building sturdy bridges are wonderful projects that use the engineering design process. But when we don't take our students any further, we've missed out on the opportunity to give them the experience of how they can use their excellent foundation of skills in a long-term project, like engineers do in the real world. Take your STEM program to the next level with Stage 3 STEM, long-term projects. I teach kindergarten through 7th grade STEM as an enrichment class. I see each grade level for 1 or 2 class periods each week, with each class period being about 45 minutes long. The time breakdown for each of the 3 stages of STEM, as I just mentioned, looks something like this. Stage 1 is an introductory activity that usually takes about 15 minutes at the beginning of a class and is sprinkled in throughout the year to refresh those basic team building skills. Stage 2 engineering design challenges are typically the bulk of my lessons and takes about 3 of my 45-minute class periods to go through all the steps of the engineering design process, discuss science concepts, and reflect on the challenge. Then the most obvious difference for Stage 3 STEM projects is that they take a long time. I usually spend 6 to 8 weeks working on a project with my students. In this session, I am going to walk you through some examples of long-term STEM projects that I do with my elementary and middle school students, with some that can be used with high school as well. I will also be giving you some guidelines to help you generate some ideas and develop a long-term STEM project of your own. One of my students' favorite projects is animal habitats. I did this with 2nd grade this year, but it has also been used up to 5th grade. It meets many next generation science standards on interdependent relationships and ecosystems, earth systems, and weather and climate, and engineering design. The students' mission with this project is to learn about different biomes around the world, discuss the different ecosystems within the biomes, and then target an animal within an ecosystem to learn about its habitat. Each student will then do research on the animal that they chose and create a diorama display that displays that animal's habitat. The habitat must meet the 4 things needed to be an animal habitat: a source of food, a source of water, shelter, and space to thrive. To make this an engineering design challenge, this project has another problem to solve. They need to incorporate some kind of mechanism to make their animal move within the habitat without them touching it. For example, one student chose a koala as their animal and tied a string around their koala figurine and then created a pulley type system where they could pull the string and the koala would be retreated back into the eucalyptus tree in the habitat. Once the students finished their habitat design that met the 4 requirements of the habitat and included a way for their animal to move without touching it, they had to present it to the class. Another great long-term project that has more math emphasis is designing a school garden. I've done this with 4th through 6th grades. Students are given the mission to design a school garden that fits within certain dimensions, incorporates specific elements such as a certain number of specific size raised beds, and must be within a given budget. I really like that this project helps students apply their math skills in a real-world scenario. Students had to research not only the cost of materials that they will need, but also which vegetables grow in our hardiness zone, which plants are compatible with each other, and correct plant spacing requirements. Then they had to sketch their garden plan in graphing paper to scale and calculate how much different materials were needed. This includes doing volume calculations to see how much soil they needed to include in their budget for each raised bed, perimeter calculations for the lumber of the raised beds or fencing around the garden. They also needed to consider the sunlight and water needs of the plants and make sure that no shadows were being cast where vegetables would be growing, and they had to plan for irrigation too. At our school, this project culminated in 2 ways. First, students built a scale model of their garden plan based on their design. Then, we fortunately had the opportunity to make this a design competition where the winning design was turned into an actual garden for our school. The student whose design won got to name the garden and got a plaque at the entrance with their name on it too. This project was also collaborative, being done in pairs and put to use a lot of teamwork skills that we had built up with the Stage 1 and Stage 2 STEM activities prior to this project. Now let's break down the examples I just shared by providing a blueprint for you to structure your own long-term STEM projects. Step 1. Have a theme that meets the standards and/or goals of your program. Science standards, engineering design, math, and even ELA and history can all be incorporated in a long-term project. The animal habitat and school garden projects both meet several science and math standards and could easily include writing a story or report to meet ELA standards as well as including other disciplines. Another goal for my STEM program that I am currently using a long-term project for is to teach my students how to use their skills to improve the lives of others. After all, we want our students to see how engineers solve real-world problems that are helpful to society. Through the Open Wheelchair Foundation, my 4th grade students are currently building a motorized wheelchair for a child in need. We're incorporating simple machines, circuitry, and math into this project as well as using a 3D printer for some of the components. You may reach out to other organizations that could utilize your students in accomplishing something to help solve a real-world problem too. Have your students build a ramp for a wheelchair-bound person, or for a building, or maybe design a 3D print a component needed for a prosthetic device. Contact local engineering or medical companies to seek creative challenges for your students. Step 2. Have the end goal include designing a physical component. This is still an engineering-focused project, not a research paper. Have students bring their designs to life in some sort of scaled way. The animal habitats were not only engineering challenges to replicate a real habitat, but also required a way to move the animals without touching them. The garden project requires that students apply their research to building a scale model. Step 3. Require research of scientific concepts. Research should play a major role in your project. Students need to learn how to acquire information needed. This starts with knowing how to ask the right questions too. A STEM program should include opportunities to train our students to be curious, ask questions, and find or create solutions. Teach your students how to identify the problem, and then use a search engine to find the answer from a reputable source, or make a trip to the school or local city library to find the information needed. Students should keep a notebook to log their questions and the research answers that they find. Step 4. Necessitate complex and sequential planning. This means that the design needed to be made in stages. One part could not be decided upon or planned before making another decision. For the garden project, this meant that the number and size of the raised beds could not be determined until the plant spacing needs were known. And the plant spacing needs couldn't be known until the types of plants and their companion planting considerations had been decided through research and team preference. As another example, in the animal habitat project, the students could not design the features in their habitat without obviously knowing where their animal lives and what they eat. As you step through these types of projects further instruction is needed to help these students progress in their design. When designing the project for your students, start with the end goal and work backwards through the information students will need to plan out weekly lessons and guide them. Your plan may look something like mine for the garden project. Week 1, we introduced the project lessons and had a lesson on drawing to scale. Week 2, there was a lesson on plant hardiness zones and companion planting. Week 3, lesson on plant spacing and volume calculations. Then week 4 was irrigation needs. and weeks 5 and 6 were focused on building the scale model. Then step 5, emphasize presentation of knowledge. This could be in the form of a formal competition with judges, or by some other means of a presentation of each project in front of the class, or posted for families to view virtually. For the Animal Habitat Project, I put the students' projects on display during a science fair open house for the school and parents to come and see all the amazing creations this class came up with. But I also wanted parents to be able to hear their child's presentation that they did in class. So I saw an idea from Double Peak School in San Marcos, California that was really clever, and I had to use it with my students. Using a green screen, I took a picture of each student's project and then recorded the students giving their presentation such that it looked like they were inside their own habitat. Here's what it looked like.
Hi, I am Piper, and this is Savannah. And I think the Savannah is a great place. And there are tigers here, living here. And tigers need 4 things: water, food, shelter, space. And they eat fish, I think. Tiger stripes look like shadows of glass, so their predators won't find them. How do you like tigers? Because I think they're pretty cool, don't you? Oh, bye!
This was so fun, and the students were so excited to share the knowledge that they had learned in this way. I then created QR codes for each video and made pictures of the students holding their QR codes to attach to their projects on display. So much content depth in this project, and the students continue to talk about it. And because it was engaging and hands-on, it is likely to stick with them longer. Long-term projects are also beneficial to your school in a few other ways. First, for this project, I coordinated with the regular classroom teacher so that we were building habitats while she was teaching them about life cycles and other related animal science topics. It was a great tie-in and took some of the science content off her plate that we were covering, so she had more time in her other subjects. And secondly, it was a wonderful opportunity to showcase the benefit of having a STEM program to the parents, which your principal or administrators will also love. To jumpstart your long-term STEM project planning, let me help you brainstorm by providing a few other ideas. First, you don't have to start from scratch when you're doing a long-term project. Look for opportunities to partner or utilize offerings from other organizations. I already mentioned the Open Wheelchair Foundation. Another program that we have used alongside our garden project is Tomatosphere, a program from the First Seed Foundation. With Tomatosphere, your students can investigate the effects of the space environment on growth of food that will inevitably support long-term human space travel. To do this, you request tomato seeds and you'll receive a bag that has been flown in space aboard the International Space Station, as well as a bag of seeds that has remained on Earth. You won't know which bag is which to keep the experiment unbiased. Then your students will plant the seeds and make observations as the plants grow. The results your students submit will help real scientists. You can incorporate this science experiment into the garden design project. You can even apply for a grant through your local 4-H to put raised beds at your school. You can also incorporate a science experiment that your students can launch into the edge of space themselves through a high-altitude balloon launch. This long-term project, students create a payload that contains a GoPro camera, weather data recorders, and an experiment of your choice, then launch it to the stratosphere. This is typically best for middle school or high school students due to the intricacies of the project and level of science information involved. You can have your students come up with an experiment and even let the whole school vote on the top 3 ideas. You could see the effects of high-altitude flight on plants, marshmallows, bubble wrap bubbles, chemical hand warmers, digital clocks, or really anything. This kind of project is really fun because it culminates in an exciting event, Launch Day.
the whole thing. The kids have a GPS tracker on there to make sure we get it back. Right. They also have a flight computer measuring temperature, pressure data the whole way up, so we know where we're at and what's happening in the atmosphere. And they've also made 3D models. So they have little models that represent their school on the payload. All right, so we're going to find out a lot from these balloons as they go up. Two, one. All right. Okay, slow go. But whoa, there it goes. Another balloon number 2 launched, and it was a successful launch. And the students at Harlandale Middle School are going to find out all kinds of good information about what's going on in the atmosphere. So what a lot of fun we had out here in Lavernia. So Stacia, launch was successful. We're going to find out a lot about what's going on in the atmosphere.
The community can get excited about your project as you release the balloon and track it until the balloon pops around 100,000 feet and returns back to the ground to be retrieved. Kits for this can be found at highaltitudescience.com to make this an easier step-by-step project. More information on how you can do this with your students can be found in your handouts. My all-time favorite project that I've used with elementary and middle school students is a colony project. Students learn more about the moon or Mars, then brainstorm and research design solutions for food, water, energy, and other critical systems. And then they build a colony model from recycled materials. This project incorporates current events happening in space exploration, as well as touching on many science standards. The engineering design process is also used to complete the colony design. To understand the challenge, students must first reflect about our lives on Earth. What do we need to survive? What do we need to be productive and happy humans? Students learn that life is more than the basics of food, water, air, shelter. We need social interaction, community, learning, purpose, and more. Next, how can we create this life on the moon or Mars? Students will need to explore the atmosphere, gravity, geography, and resources to determine what is lacking. My students complete an online scavenger hunt, explore Google Mars or Google Moon Map, then teach the class their knowledge through a skit or PSA. The colony project can also culminate in a competition with actual scientists and engineers acting as judges, much like a science fair. The judges rate students on engineering, mental health, and architecture components. Then winning teams get cool prizes like quadcopters or even a field trip to NASA. This is definitely the highlight of the year, and the project can be done virtually if needed too. Did any of these project ideas spark any ideas of your own? Think of your favorite thing you teach and extend it into a long-term project by adding more research and a larger scale design component. Combine several subjects like robotics, coding, space science, and plants, or even just add more technology to something you already do by incorporating green screen or stop motion animation to have students present their knowledge. If you have any questions or would like help brainstorming how you can take STEM to the next level with your students, please reach out to me using the contact information below. I'd be happy to help. Hope to connect with you soon.